Let's talk about the US election. So buckle up, it's going to be a bumpy ride. Hey everyone, my name is Wes. This is Interactive English, the channel that's all about trying to help you practice and improve your English. And today it's more of a vocabulary lesson because if you haven't heard, there is a presidential election coming up in the United States. So I wanted to take this opportunity to talk to you about, well, how the election works and teach you some different words and phrases that I think are very useful that will help you better understand the election in case you happen to be reading about it or maybe you're listening to a news report. This is useful vocabulary that will help. So I want to start out by saying that I'm going to try to make this lesson apolitical, which is a great word that means that it is not connected to a political party. I'm not really trying to promote one party over the other. I'm going to try to make it apolitical, but it is difficult to discuss politics without kind of sharing your opinion in one way or another. I will say, in my opinion, because I want to talk to you quite a bit about how the election works. I really don't like the way that the system works, and I will explain why in just a moment. So let's just begin with the basics. In the United States, it's really considered a two-party system. And that is a phrase that you may hear, a two-party system. What it refers to is that two political parties really just dominate politics. And on one side, you have the Republican Party, which is Trump's party, and they're viewed as more conservative. And then on the other side, you have the Democrats, which are viewed as more liberal, and that party's leader is Joe Biden. And if you are not affiliated or registered with one of these main parties, then you are considered an independent. And an independent is talking about a voter who is not registered with a political party. And to be honest, I am an independent. I am not registered as a Democrat, as a Republican. I'm an independent. And you will hear this word a lot because both Biden and Trump, they want to get the vote of the independents. And typically, independents tend to have more moderate views. And this is another common word because moderate refers to views that are not extreme and are often accepted by a larger number of people. Now, you may be wondering, why would anyone register to be identified with a particular political party? Well, that's because in some states, you need to be registered with that party in order to participate in the party's primary. And the primary is just when the voters choose who is going to be the candidate for that party, who is going to be the party's leader, essentially. And the primary, it's already done, it's finished, and you have Trump, who is the representative for the Republicans, and Biden is the representative for the Democrats. But to put things in context for you, most Americans are not registered as either a Democrat or a Republican. Among registered voters, 41% are independent, 26% are Republican, and 31% are Democrat. But no matter if you're a Democrat, Republican, or independent, very soon the election is coming and people will go vote or cast their ballot. This is a phrase that it means the same thing as to vote. So when the election gets here, you're probably going to hear people talk about a couple of different numbers. You're going to hear people talk about the popular vote. And this refers to the total number of votes that a candidate receives. And somebody will win the popular vote. However, that person may not become the president. I know it sounds strange that somebody could receive the most votes, but they don't win. What determines the next president is actually the Electoral College vote. So the Electoral College is a phrase that you should definitely learn because it is something that you will hear people talk about. So right now I want to take a moment and teach you about the Electoral College. And this is really the main reason why I said I'm not really a fan of the way that the voting system works. So what the hell is the Electoral College? Well, in the entire country, there are 538 electors or 538 electoral votes. And in order to win the presidency, a candidate must receive the majority, which is 270. So that's the magic number. Both Trump and Biden need to get to 270 or more electoral votes in order to become president. Now, each state is assigned a number of electors or electoral votes, and that is based on the population of the state. So, for example, California is the state with the highest population, and California has 55 electoral votes. The next state would be Texas. Texas is the second most populous state, and they have 38 electoral votes. And then you have a state like Montana. Montana is a big state in terms of land, but it has a small population. So Montana has 3 electoral votes. So I know this is a little strange, but just stay with me because the Electoral College has been with the country since the beginning. The US was founded in 1776, and it's pretty much always used the Electoral College. What has changed is the way in which we use the Electoral College, because right now, 48 states have a winner-take-all. And what that means is that whoever wins the popular vote in the state, they get all of the Electoral College votes. It doesn't matter how close the race is. So if somebody wins 51% to 49%, that's a very close race. But the person who got 51% is going to get 100% of those electoral votes. And I know you're probably thinking to yourself, well, that's just silly. That doesn't make much sense at all. How did this happen? Well, we've been using the Electoral College system for a while, but it really changed in 1824. This is the year that most states started using this winner-take-all approach. And the reason that they were doing this was completely partisan. And partisan is another very common word that you will hear. It means that somebody strongly supports an idea or a party, and they don't really carefully consider, well, what's best for everyone. Now, there are groups across the country that want to change this. They want to amend the process. And amend is a great verb when talking about politics. It means you want to change something. Critics of the Electoral College would say that at the federal level, when voting for the president, depending on the state you live in, your vote really just has no influence whatsoever. So for example, let's look at California. California is a blue state. And this is a phrase that if you hear about a blue state, it is a state that is really, it's controlled by the Democrats. So California is a blue state. It has 55 electoral votes, which they'll go to Joe Biden. Now, if you are a Republican who's living in California, then really your vote just has no influence. And the same goes for Democrats who may live in Texas. Texas is a red state, and that is a state that is just controlled by Republicans. So Democrats voting in Texas, well, it's not going to have much of an influence. However, Democrats, they're fighting hard in Texas, and they're trying to make it a purple state. And a purple state is talking about, well, a state that has more of a mix of Democrats and Republicans, and you don't know how the vote is going to go. So you have blue states, red states, and purple states, because if you mix blue and red, you get more of a purple color. Regardless, in our current situation, I don't think Biden or Trump are that interested in the blue states and the red states because that's already been decided. What I think they are truly interested in are those purple states, which are more commonly referred to as swing states. These are states that, well, they could go for Biden and the Democrats, or they could go for Trump and the Republicans. They may also be referred to as battleground states. Either one, you're going to hear people use these quite often. Swing states or battleground states. And across the country, there are about 14 different swing states. But I think really there are only about 7 or 8 true swing states because some of these states will lean left, which means they are more likely to go for Biden and the Democrats, and the other states may lean right, which means they're more likely to go for Trump and the Republicans. And the swing states, those are the ones that everyone is going to be keeping an eye on come election day. Really, the only reason why Biden or Trump may go to a blue state or a red state is to fundraise for their campaign. And when you fundraise, you are just raising money for a campaign, which is it's an organized group of people that are trying to get someone elected. And in the United States, campaigns cost a lot of money. Do you have any idea how much the 2016 presidential campaign cost? I'm going to tell you. When everything was all said and done, the two campaigns combined spent over $1 billion. Some of that money, that $1 billion, came from PACs or super PACs. And those are two useful acronyms. So a PAC, it just stands for a political action committee. And a super PAC is just a super political action committee. It's an organization that can raise money privately in order to influence an election, which is a fancy way of saying that, well, the election is for sale. Well, kind of, because the more you donate, the more influence you have. And there are limits as to how much a person can donate to a campaign. But those same limits don't exist when a person or company wants to donate to a PAC or a super PAC. And that's partly why presidential elections are so expensive. Let's go back to that $1 billion, which is ridiculous. It's like buying every person in the United States a cup of coffee. And to be completely honest, I think I would rather have a cup of coffee than just listen to a bunch of political advertisements, because I think it is our civic duty, which is a phrase that means it is our responsibility as a citizen to try to become informed about, well, what do these candidates stand for? And there are many ways that we can learn about candidates. We can read about them. We can watch them give interviews and talk about what they want to do and the changes they want to make. We could also talk to our friends and family, but that can be a little dangerous because, to be perfectly honest, civil discourse in the United States, it's a bit toxic. And civil discourse refers to polite conversation concerning ordinary citizens. And yes, right now, civil discourse in the United States, I'd say it's at a bit of a low. But still, very soon, everyone's going to head to the polls and they're going to cast their ballot. And head to the polls, that is a phrase that means people are going to go to a voting location and they're going to vote. But because there is a pandemic, there's going to be more absentee voting as well as mail-in voting. And if you've been following the US election at all, those are phrases that I'm pretty sure you've heard. First, you need to keep in mind that each state determines on its own how it's going to do voting. So an absentee ballot, this is when a person requests a ballot and election officials will send it to them and then they mail it back. And people do this because maybe, well, they're out of the country. Or perhaps somebody is just outside of the state that they live in and therefore they request an absentee ballot. Now, other states, when they say mail-in voting, what they refer to that as is they send out ballots to all registered voters. And then those voters, they can either mail the ballot back or they can head to the polls and they can cast their ballot in person. The reason why I'm talking to you about this is because, well, some people are claiming that the election will be rigged. And this is an adjective that means that something is dishonestly arranged in order to get your desired outcome. Proponents would say that this person just wants to maintain the election's integrity. Critics would say that this person is engaging in voter suppression. And that is another phrase that you may come across. Voter suppression is when you just do not allow people to vote. What I would say, and this is not my opinion, I want to stick with the facts, is that there is absolutely no evidence of widespread voter fraud through the mail. So people should not be worried about voting by mail. All this does is just create a lot of drama because, well, I think it's fair to say that politics in the United States has become a little like reality TV. And I think as we approach the season finale, November 3rd, I think you can expect a lot of suspense because typically in a normal, boring election, which are the elections that I prefer, one person will concede the election, and to concede is to admit something is true. Someone will concede and they admit that, okay, I lost the election, and then they congratulate the winner. Something tells me that this election might be a little different. Spoiler alert, it would not surprise me if this election is contested. And what that means, if an election is contested, it means that the validity of the results is challenged by the losing candidate. So after November 3rd, I think it's likely that we may not know who the winner is. It could take days, weeks, I sure as hell hope not. It could take a while to figure out who the next president of the United States will be. I know many of you may not be from the United States, but I want to hear from you. I want you to cast your ballot in the comments below. Who would you vote for, Biden or Trump? Let me know down below in the comments. All I would ask is please, 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 let's keep it civil. But let me know who you would vote for. I will even tell you who I am going to vote for in the comments below. I will get things started. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoy the dramatic upcoming election, and I will see you next time.